Hi, I'm up here today. Check this out right below me. This is a look at the live auction over on heritageauctions.com. It won't be live when you look at it, but I wanted to catch this before we get too far into the bidding. They're already up to Zeo. This is the screen-worn 1996 red Zeo Ranger uniform worn by the late Jason David Frank. And as you can see, the bidding is going up on it, but that is not very high, and that is pretty emblematic of how most of the bidding has gone today. You go ahead and check out the listings for the closed auctions if you'd like, see how much it went for. But a lot of these are going for under 20 grand. In fact, seems to be going for like the price of a used Honda Civic. So, and this kind of blends into what this is over here we're looking at. This is going to be distracting. Sorry, it's going to be down there. I had the sound turned off, so at least you don't have the auctioneer in your ear, but you're going to be seeing that go by. And I just want to leave that there to demonstrate just how kind of like end of the road the brand has been. The situation that we're facing right now is Hasbro has driven this to the point where they're liquidating the assets, okay? And why this matters is because to you and me, the average Power Ranger fan, right? Appreciator, liker, enjoyer, if you will. This is the end of the road. A lot of people say like, oh, they're just liquidating this old stuff. It's fine. If they want to make stuff that involves those old Rangers, they'll make new suits. That's pretty expensive for a one-off, right? Let's say that they were going to bring back the Zeo Rangers, absent Tommy, like they have, or the Turbo Rangers. That way TJ is there instead of Tommy. And let's just say they do that. Well, they're selling those suits, right? Those suits are going to be gone. So that means they have to make new suits. And they don't have to make one. They have to make at least 3, if not 4, because there'll be damage done to them. There are things you'll see here that are called hero suits and action suits. And of course, as you can see here, the shield piece from the gold Zeo Ranger didn't survive. And so that's the kind of what you have to deal with, is that if you're going to make these suits again, that's a pretty big buy for a one-off, for a single episode or 2 episodes even. And they're not going to go dedicating a whole season of these things to any old Power Ranger team. It's just not going to happen. You got to redo everything then. You got to rebuild the Zords. You got to rebuild all of the rubber suit equipment, all that stuff. And while they did that for Zed, right, and they created Robo Rita, you're dealing with a very extraordinary situation where the brand was coming to an end, and most everybody involved with it at that point was out of ideas and or uninspired by it. See Simon Bennett. However, what happened is that behind the scenes, Hasbro, right, they did not have a vested interest in like owning this property. What happened is that the CEO, Brian Goldman, purchased the brand with the idea that he was going to transform it. It was in a brand in decline when he picked it up from Hiam Saban, but he bought the whole package, meaning the toy production as well. And that would become a headache quite rapidly. But what we found out in an interview with his successor, Chris Cox, earlier this year, was that during an investor call, Chris explained that Brian did not notify research and development. He didn't let anybody know. He wrote a check on behalf of Hasbro, and they owned it one day. So the people that were used to making G.I. Joe and Transformers toys were suddenly thrust with, Power Ranger toys to make. Now, granted, that's not new, because if you know anything about G.I. Joe and Transformers, rather, you know that the Power Rangers brand is sort of in the middle of both of those. Fancy vehicles, neat weapons, and transforming giant robots that combined into bigger transforming giant robots and space. So this sort of like, it wasn't too new, right? So when Goldman, I think it's Goldman. That was his name. Chris Goldman, Goldar. Anyway, it was Brian. When Brian first picked this up, it wasn't like a big leap in his mind to get Hasbro producing these toys in the vein that Bandai had been producing them. And see, that's how it works in Japan, is that Bandai produces the toys, and then again, that's sort of reverse engineered back into the show. It is, again, like between Toei, the company that puts this together, and Bandai, sort of a handshake situation, where they'll send Bandai some sketches, and then Bandai will send back what's possible through engineering to create a toy of, and then that finds its way into the show with the transforming mechanisms that the toy has, okay? What the problem is, right, for Hasbro that nobody was really thinking about, or at least Brian wasn't when he picked it up, the previous CEO to the guy who has it now. When this previous CEO bought Power Rangers and the toy rights, he was not thinking that, wow, okay, so somehow we have to not violate Bandai's copyright over these designs, but we have to produce near identical toys due to the footage. And now, again, like the intention may have been to migrate Power Rangers into its own authentic 100% American made situation. However, that was not how it was when it first began in Hasbro's ownership. And so the decision to do this was really bad. Really, really bad. And so what happened is that Chris admitted in this article right here, it's quite a ways down in here because, again, a lot of information to go through. But yeah, it's under what happened is that the brand fell below $50 million a year, okay? And so the situation is that Goldner, that's Brian Goldner, not Brian Goldar. So when Brian Goldner bought it, it was making more than 50 million, right? But it was on its way down dramatically. Ninja Steel was not helping the brand whatsoever. Don't make any mistake about what we're talking about here. And so the situation that ended up kind of like falling out was that Hasbro decided to license this stuff because it had made less than 50 million. This is what Chris Cox was talking about on the investor call, is that because the Power Rangers brand had fallen down to the below 50 million, they were licensing out the production of the toys to Playmates. And of course, Playmates is more famously known for making toys for children under 8 years old, if you will, whereas Power Rangers has been previously targeted at, mostly 8 to 14-year-old boys. That had mostly been its target demographic pretty much since its inception. It bled both ways into like older and younger demographics, obviously, but its main appeal was sort of targeted at that 8 to 14 market. However, it slipped out of there when competition like Dragon Ball Z showed up because no longer was Power Rangers the action-adventure television show that no other show on television was like. You had all this flood of stuff from Japan, and in particular, Dragon Ball Z, at the time, the world's most famous action-adventure show ever, dethroning Power Rangers quite rapidly. And now the brand refused to evolve with that. Right? And you know it, and I know it. It stuck to this PSA-driven thing after Disney got a hold of it. Again, like they let go and gave it back to Hiam Saban. So rather than sort of mimicking the Japanese production that Disney had done, most of their production sort of mimicked what had happened in Japan rather than rewrote the story and tried to jam the footage in, which is what Saban had done previously, to some success or otherwise. You'd be surprised to learn that the donor footage for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has absolutely nothing to do with teenagers with attitude or gymnastics or kung fu, in fact. They just do those things, certainly, but the focus of the story where the footage comes from has absolutely nothing to do with Angel Grove or getting your homework done on time. But I digress. What we're looking at here is the brand dying. And no more evident than that is this right here. You're looking at these bits and pieces of the Power Rangers brand being sold off item for item. And this is the entire set, okay? Everything that wasn't damaged to the point where Heritage Auctions didn't feel safe, like putting it up for auction and next to things that were not damaged, for instance. That the damaged auction will be coming soon, I guess. So apparently there'll be a damaged beyond like authentication, I guess. Like you tell what it is, but it's like not something somebody can like slap a certificate of authenticity on, I guess. I'm not sure what the stipulation is, but for whatever reason, these props and whatever were broken or damaged to a point where they were not able to be put up for sale right here. And again, like they're going through the Zeo stuff right here still. And as we're going through this, you see the bids flying by. And as I said earlier, it's all very low because, again, the brand is in decline. All right, I'm going to circle back to that again. For some reason, Hasbro can't take 5 people wearing rainbow spandex that pilot giant robots that fight giant monsters in any environment, really. It seems to be space, magical realms, Angel Grove, some other city, the future, the past, it doesn't matter. They get it on. And for some reason, Hasbro can't make that print money for them. Now, I ask you, if you've made it this far in the video, comment down below. What do you think is the major problem with this brand? I have my own theory, and I'll explain in just a second, but I want to make sure that we get your thoughts in on this, because I don't think I'm alone in what I'm thinking, but I don't think I have the whole picture as to what's gone on here. Now, as I understand it, what happened with this is that, along with the brand refusing to evolve, the interest in Power Rangers began to dwindle because of the atmosphere around the brand itself. Due to it being kind of locked in that PSA driven, don't do drugs, kids kind of mentality, moral at the end of the story delivering, a lot of people who grew up with Power Rangers evolved into the Super Sentai fandom, because that's where the footage comes from. I'm sure if you're watching this video, it's not news to you what Super Sentai is. If you haven't watched any of it, I'm sure you've heard of it. And so with that came like an abandonment of new Power Ranger ideas. The only thing that really sparked a lot of like interest in the brand was the Boom Studios Shattered Grid storyline that saw a like ultimate evil Tommy that started taking over the multiverse and, you know, compiling Ranger powers together to create soldiers and custom powers for himself. And it made himself into the formidable Lord Draken. And again, I think that it was a really good move to do this. I don't like good characters being evil, but in this regard, they made a very special effort to explain why this one was damaged beyond repair and why he did what he did, okay? It wasn't just one fine day he decided to be evil, or one fine day he was raised by evil, and so he grew up that way. It was you should check it out. I highly recommend it. I don't want to spoil it. Usually I'm fine with spoiling stuff, but I don't want to spoil this because I truly believe that this is one of the better storylines that Power Rangers has ever, ever, ever had. And it is an absolute travesty that it has never been put to film, and most likely never will be at this point, unless it's a fan film, okay? That's the only way you're going to get to see Lord Draken doing this thing, is if some fan makes it, you know? Like, I think we got Power Rangers Unworthy out there on YouTube that did this, and then the actor that played Andros has his own Power Rangers series that I'm forgetting the name of. And there's Crimson Vision Studios as well that has done Lord Draken. But again, without Jason David Frank around, it is a bit of a steep ask to get people in on Power Rangers these days. Because even now, you've got Boom Studios doing a reboot of the entire franchise. You'll notice there is some differences here, a few visual keys that are a bit off, and why the female Samurai Ranger is present front and center on these covers. And that's because what happens in this new reboot is an attempt to sort of take what's familiar about the Power Rangers lore and run it through every diversity, inclusion, and equity political filter you could possibly come up with. And so in the story, we are introduced to Lauren, the Red Samurai Ranger. Lauren Sheba is her name, excuse me. Lauren Sheba. Because, you know, for some reason, we just have to go bend over backwards to explain why a white kid and his white sister are descendants of samurai lords. Like, we can't just track that out, or we can't just have Asian Americans playing them for some reason. It's just such a bizarre choice to go headlong into Power Rangers Samurai for Neo Saban. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Shinkenger in Japan is very, very Japanesey. Okay, it's very, very Japanesey, and I don't say that to mock it. I say that because it's Japanese culture, and the samurai are a celebrated people in their culture, sort of like how our patriots at the Revolution are celebrated for different reasons, but they're sort of storied kind of people. The role of a samurai is very important in Japan, not just like some interesting thing in like music videos and video games. It's historically very important. And so a lot of what went on in Shinkenger was very culturally ingrained, is very rooted in the actual history of the samurai. And so in came Neo Saban, and Hiam was like, hey man, I got a great idea. Let's take this thing that screams Japan and try to jam it into a California spring roll. Okay, we're going to try and turn this into Bayside, California here, complete with samurai lords in Southern California somehow. I have no idea. I really don't. I don't know what was going on in the writer's room. I question it a lot. But what happened with her in this setting is that this is a alternate universe where the Power Rangers existed independent of Eltar and Zordon. And so for the past many thousands of years, the Power Rangers have been sort of existing as a guardian force of the Earth. Now, I'm tripping over that because I just wanted to make sure that my memory is right with what I saw in the book. It is the Power Rangers Samurai team with the origami Megazord that is doing the defending for these many thousands of years. Now, of course, this is being explained by Lauren as the narrator, but we don't know that when we're first introduced to this whole situation. And so what we're witnessing is that the Power Rangers Samurai team existing in the feudal era of Japan, and then all like pre-existing the feudal era of Japan, but becoming like known in the feudal era of Japan. And then that same team with the same weaponry and same machines is doing battle all through history, defending England, fighting in the Revolution, participating in World War II. Just the kind of the crazy stuff you saw Michael Bay do with the Transformers there, having Bumblebee siege the Berlin capital of Germany there during 1930s Germany that we can't talk about on YouTube, or else we'll get the channel canceled. Yeah, we'll get the cancel channeled. Yeah. Oh boy. But that's what we're looking at here. Now you might note that this is a neat looking Power Ranger right here. He's got this nice armor going on and sort of backdropped with other armored Ranger folk. Now, this is like their attempt at creating a new aesthetic for the Power Rangers. For a long time, people have criticized the spandex. For some reason, Hasbro have felt very, I guess, sensitive about that. And so when we got the Power Rangers Cosmic Fury, yeah, there it is, Cosmic Fury suits, they had this strange outer armor, foam outer armor thing that was like sort of like a soft body armor looking thing, but still color coded with the spandex on the arms and legs so that it didn't look different as a material or color from the spandex. It was very confusing as to what their goal was with that, but they were very sensitive about the spandex being the main sort of armor for the Power Ranger suits, I guess. And so as you can see with this redesign over here with Boom is that they've decided to sort of embrace a knight aesthetic with the Power Rangers here. And so this is sort of like a dinosaur knight with an overblown shoulder piece here that's got all these sort of dinosaur aesthetic-y pieces. And again, it falls in with the one we saw here with the first Power Rangers Prime issue. And you can see it's the same suit, but on a female character. And what we get is we get the impression that Lauren is on the run as the story goes on. We see her trying to outrun Eltaran's security forces as her face slides off her skull. But anyway, and what we find out is that the Eltarans arrived on Earth in Power Rangers Prime sometime around like the 1990s, or I want to say about the 1980s, 1990s, maybe a little later. And they are arriving in response to the I believe it's called the Beast Gang or the Star Beasts or some very weak name, very, very weak name. And so these creatures have descended upon Earth. They were wreaking havoc. The Eltarans showed up and kicked all kinds of butt. And then they decided they were going to stay and establish a government over Earth and colonize the world. You might remember that word, kind of a fun word we hear a lot these days, colonizers, right? And so what we find out is that Eltarans have taken over Earth in a sort of soft power manner. They've made themselves useful to humanity to the point where they've sort of replaced humanity as the dominant life form on the planet. Now, of course, with the Eltarans came the Aquatarans and various other, like the Mercurians and various other races. I believe the Triforians were also spotted among the denizens of Earth. And somewhere in the mid 2050s, 2040s, I want to say, somewhere around there. And of course, Angel Grove is in the background right here in this Uniformity for a Better Future cover that they're putting here. And so what Lauren is that she is a Power Ranger, and it is passed down through her family, as alluded to earlier when I explained that the Samurai Rangers were the ones protecting Earth for thousands of years. It would appear that it's sort of, it might not be blood based, but it is sort of lineage based, I guess. If your parents were Power Rangers, odds are you'll be a Power Ranger, sort of kind of like how if your parents were police officers, odds are you will most likely become a police officer too. Not that you're pre-programmed, it's just kind of like it's, blue bloods, that kind of stuff. I didn't get the vibe that she was specially destined to be a ranger. It just was kind of a question of where she was introduced to the power through. And so what it is that the Eltarans are in opposition to the Power Rangers because the Power Rangers possess an equal amount of offensive capability. And while the Power Rangers are small in number, they are very effective when employed against the Eltarans. Now, it's not immediately clear what is going on with that, but what the vibe is that the Power Rangers have a separate power source, or at least a more pure power source than the Eltarans do. Now, again, I can't confirm or deny if that's the true intent, but what's made evidently clear is that the Power Rangers are better than the Eltaran forces. But they're just smaller in number, so they're less effective on the global scale at, dealing with trouble. And so as the story is progressing, we're introduced to sort of basically what happened with the Spider-Gwen series, where different Power Rangers figures are in different positions within the Power Rangers universe. And we're introduced to the VR Troopers. You might remember them. Ryan Steele and his friends are now the kind of authorized human force that is intended to, I guess, be sort of a bridge to alienate the Power Rangers. Why bother with being a Power Ranger when you can become a trooper? Join the VR Troopers today, begin trooper training tomorrow. That kind of thing. And so we even see Ryan show up in the comic, and he's explaining that it's time to do trooper training with one of the guys talking about a Power Ranger conspiracy. Because again, these they're sort of like the Eltarans want to play down that the Power Rangers are even real. But even though people have seen them and experienced them in their lifetimes, the Eltarans want to stress that no, these aren't real. These are things that the Beast Gang or whoever that intergalactic bad guy group that totally wasn't sent by the evil Eltarans was talking about. But what I want to stress with all this, explaining all this backstory about this comic, is that it's mainly intended to paint what would be the father figure, Zordon, as bad. And once again, we're back at this, oppositional idea. By the way, I forgot one part. Because the Aquatarans and the Mercurians and the Triforians are all sort of refugees on Earth, which again, we kind of heard about in Power Rangers SPD when Grum's forces were destroying all these planets and consuming other ones, enslaving other ones. So it's not unheard of to have a massive refugee population from space on Earth as sort of like a last stand against it, against conquest, if you will. But what we get is that there is, in fact, just a direct. I don't have the comic book page to show you, but I'm just going to bring up Lauren hiding behind a dumpster can because it's just funny to me. But what happens in the actual story, the actual panels is that at the Angel Grove University, there's a conversation between Eltaran students about the about Eltaran influence on humankind, about Earth, how it exists now, and the question is put to an Eltaran and an Aquataran student: do you feel that your presence as a colonizer, Mr. Eltaran, and as a refugee, Miss Aquataran, has helped the Earth at all? And so, of course, they draw the conclusion that the refugee says, no, my presence hasn't helped this planet. And of course, the colonizer says yes. And here we are again with real world politics leaking into people who wear rainbow spandex that pilot giant robots that beat the hell out of giant monsters. It's like, okay, I understand why you can't make money out of now. Okay, you have to stuff in your politics everywhere. It has to be a political pamphlet. It has to explain to people how they need to vote. Right? You need the Power Rangers PSA to shift from teaching kids not to do drugs to teaching them not to vote Republican. It just doesn't stop with these guys. It just doesn't stop. And they're going to learn the lesson that all these other corporations are learning, that you can't do this. And so they'll go on for a little while with their neat little Spider-Gwen reboot of the Power Rangers universe. And it might even get a little TV movie, maybe even a series. Who knows? The armors are pretty neat, and that usually is an indicator that they're trying to make a toy line. And, you know, a toy line is 9/10 of the way to getting a TV show. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I don't have faith in this new rendition of it becoming mainstream. It seems like it's going to be like an ARC thing, as sort of an experiment to see what Power Rangers is without the television show being the basis of it. Excuse me, I'm choking on my memories of Power Rangers. But as you can see, you know, we're dealing with people who don't take this lore seriously. And so I could go on for hours about this. Let me know down in the comments below if you want like a brand franchise lore retrospective. Spencer, the fellow that is the editor-in-chief of the boundingintocomics.com website, is also a fan of Power Rangers, just like I am. And so both of us sit down and we would be happy to do a podcast about this, maybe just a few videos about it that's going to go over the history of everything and, you know, where a lot of the pitfalls were that continued the degradation of the franchise. But as it stands right now, I want to remind you all, it is over, okay? From this point on, the Power Rangers will not look or feel like they ever have in the past. These suits are being liquidated, which means they have to remake new ones in order to bring these suits and actors or ambiance, attitude, machines, stories, anything about it back. It's over with. If they do anything going forward, it will not be the Power Rangers that you and I recognize. It would be a Power Rangers that looks like this and has like armored Power Rangers that look like knights here. Again, that kind of looks cool, so maybe it'll work. I doubt it, though, because it takes the spirit out of it. The Power Rangers is distinctly different from Kamen Rider, and Kamen Rider is traditionally armored, okay? And we know why. He's a brawler. Whereas the Power Rangers are based on Super Sentai, which has been a reactionary sort of rescue force, a response force, whereas the Kamen Rider has been a proactive force, so we'll have to see how it goes, guys. I don't have a lot of faith in this. Between Boom and Hasbro, they're both obsessed with their politics and not with Power Rangers, so we all know how that goes. Let me know how you feel about this in the comments below, and as always, guys, may the power protect you.